Golden Freddy is widely regarded as one of the most confusing yet intriguing FNaF characters, one of the most hated, but also the most loved. A case of a video game urban legend being as real as ever, and also being extremely important to the overarching story of the game. Golden Freddy is not a common occurrence. And there's a few things scarier than seeing a little yellow guy coming out of nowhere. And that's both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. So join me as we go on the full history of Golden Freddy, one of the most elusive Five Nights at Freddy's characters. One of the core experiences of being in the old FNaF fandom was sitting on FNaF 1 and flipping between these two cameras and trying to get a stupid Golden Freddy poster to show up. You could get that one Easter egg of Freddy ripping his head off, but it just wasn't the same. It was just there to taunt you. You couldn't actually get Golden Freddy because he was too rare. Why did you want to discover Golden Freddy so much? All he's gonna do is crash your game. But I think what it truly was is the fact that, unlike things like Herobrine, this one was real. This video game legend is a real thing, and it was 100% possible for you to find it. What is Golden Freddy? It sounds silly, but it's a genuine thing to think about. Why does he look different in FNaF 1 and 2 despite it making no sense canonically? What is his correlation to Fredbear? Why is his correlation to Fredbear? Why does his spirit in particular have so much beef with William Afton? Which spirit even is possessing Golden Freddy? After almost a decade, this character has not really been explained fully, even to this day. Even in the brand new Five Nights at Freddy's movie, Golden Freddy is left pretty mysterious, with his spirit being absent from the drawings and the kid only being referred to as Blonde Hair Kid. So let's start from the beginning with not FNaF 1, since I kinda already covered that. Let's talk about FNaF 1 and FNaF 2 together. Because I think the differences between Golden Freddy in this game and this game can determine a lot about our overall thoughts on him, and just the nature of what the hell he even is. In FNaF 1, Golden Freddy was a rare Easter egg. In FNaF 2, Golden Freddy is a core member of the animatronic cast. His mechanic remains the same, minus the use of the cameras. You don't have to look for a poster of him, he just kinda shows up in your office, and you're expected to either flip up your monitor or put on your Freddy mask. Which is basically identical to how you prevent him from killing you in FNaF 1. Except obviously FNaF 1 didn't have a Freddy mask. Although the Freddy poster thing is absent from FNaF 2's Golden Freddy mechanic, there is something similar to it, and that is the Golden Freddy head that appears at the end of the hallway. Now, I do think this Golden Freddy head apparition does have a lot of importance, less so in the fact that it's a giant Golden Freddy head, and more so with the fact that it's an apparition. These two instances confirm that Golden Freddy doesn't really need to exist physically in order to appear somewhere. The other animatronics can do ghostly stuff every now and then, but none to the degree that Golden Freddy is able to. He can vanish in an instant, he can turn to a giant head if he wants, he can take over posters. He can become repaired by the point of FNaF 1 even though it doesn't make any sense. The reasoning for Golden Freddy's design differences and the things that he can do is just kind of the fact that he's a ghost. He can change forms if he really wants to. Underneath all that, he might still just be a crumpled up old suit, but on the exterior, he's got a very angry spirit, and in the FNaF universe, angry spirits can do a lot of stuff that just does not make sense.
Warning, there are aliens invading, warning, there are aliens, they are coming.
Now, there is something in FNaF 2 regarding Golden Freddy that some would consider to be retconned later on, but it's not really a retcon if it was only implied and wasn't really confirmed in the first place. And what I'm referring to is this line from Phone Guy in the last night of the game.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Now, the implication here is presumably that William used the Golden Freddy suit, which we know now isn't the case, and he used the Spring Bonnie suit. And I'm not really sure if Scott knew what Spring Bonnie was, or if it was actually going to be a different yellow suit. Because Scott's not necessarily known for planning super far ahead, so it's really hard to say if he really did have it in mind that there was going to be a second yellow suit in the third game. But before FNAF 3 came out, everybody basically assumed that William Afton had used the Golden Freddy suit to commit the murders. And in retrospect, thinking about the idea of William using the Golden Freddy suit just really doesn't make any sense, and that's probably why Scott decided to make Spring Bonnie, because why would he use a suit with a dead body inside of it? That just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So I think Spring Bonnie being his suit of choice was definitely the right call, especially because it gives William a character to possess while the other kids all get their own suit. If one of the kids had to share a suit with William, man, that would suck for that kid.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
But in Golden Freddy's case for FNAF 2, he's mostly just kinda the weird kid of the group. He's very different from the other spirits, but there's not really an explanation given because the way he's created is pretty dang similar to the other ones. I guess Golden Freddy's jump scare plays at the end of this minigame, so it kind of implies like, oh, that spirit in the middle is kind of spooky and weird, but like, okay. Why is he spooky and weird? We don't know. We still kind of don't, but that's besides the point. We knew even less back then. And I suppose it's a good time to move on to FNAF 3 because I don't really have a whole lot else to say about Golden Freddy in terms of FNAF 2. Now, the thing that's special about Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is that it's actually the final FNAF game if you forget about all these. So obviously, it's gotta have a conclusive, satisfying ending for this character. So let's take a look at what FNAF 3 has to offer. Now, the obvious thing to mention would be Phantom Freddy, who uses Withered Golden Freddy as a base. But I feel like this is kind of often misinterpreted as him just being a Golden Freddy variant when I wouldn't really say he's supposed to be. First big thing is that he prominently stands up, which is, anything but what Golden Freddy is known for. He's just called Phantom Freddy, and all the other Phantoms are just the standard versions of their characters. The Shadow Freddy suit from FNAF 2, which prominently appears in the minigames of this game, also can appear in The Office, which kind of fits the Golden Freddy Easter egg role that this game needs. And also in later entries with Phantom Freddy in them, he was actually changed to be designed after FNAF 1 Freddy, so I don't know. In my opinion, I think Scott probably just used the Withered Golden Freddy model instead of the Withered Freddy model because it had more withering and the Phantoms are generally more damaged than their original counterparts. And even if Phantom Freddy was 100% intended to be Golden Freddy, it doesn't really matter that much because the Phantoms aren't real and they're all in the protagonist's head. Now you could argue that means the protagonist of FNAF 3 had to have seen Golden Freddy at some point, which is interesting. So I'm gonna move on to probably what you've been waiting for with this section, Happiest Day. Now, the Happiest Day minigame is definitely the most important one in FNAF 3, but I'd honestly argue it kind of isn't at the same time. Because, as we'll see in future games, Golden Freddy's spirit did not pass on after Happiest Day happened, which implies that the bad ending had to have been the canon one in FNAF 3 and not the good ending. And I know that's disappointing to a lot of people, because I know a lot of people really, really like the good ending of that game, but going off of the modern FNAF lore, I'd say the most likely option is just that the good ending of FNAF 3 just was not the canon one. The MCI victims probably didn't pass on after this, going off of what we see in FNAF 6. The puppet spirit absolutely did not pass on after this, and Golden Freddy's spirit also absolutely did not. To me at least, there's not really a world where the canon ending of FNAF 3 is the happiest day ending. Do I think it was originally intended to be? Yes, absolutely. Scott has said before that he was making FNAF 3 with the plan of it being the final game, but then people were disappointed with it, so he wanted to continue, and we all know how that went. But with the idea that FNAF 3 was supposed to be the final game, I do think Happiest Day was originally the canon ending, but in future titles, that's obviously not the case, and the bad ending happened. You could make the argument that possibly Molten Freddy doesn't have the original MCI victims inside of him, and that Golden Freddy's head isn't necessarily confirmed to be in the background of the good ending. And obviously, either way, the puppet could have survived because the puppet's not featured in either of them, despite the minigame showing otherwise. But considering how Golden Freddy's mask in the bad ending is completely in the shadows, I wouldn't really say it means anything that the mask isn't in the good ending image because, like I said, it's in the shadows. We wouldn't be able to see it anyway. I also think this clip from the Scott interview that Dawko hosted is pretty telling.
Which ending really happened?
I've given a lot of thought as to whether or not I should answer this question.
Okay.
And I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the answer is very interesting.
Okay.
You know? The answer is very interesting. The answer is complex.
Okay.
However, I'm not going to answer it because it's only going to cause strife. I mean, you see the kind of trouble that erupts, especially several years ago. The flame wars that would go on over Mangel's gender, something as simple as that. You know.
yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, people with torches and pitchforks. You know, no, I don't think I'm going to answer this one. I'm afraid.
I feel like this complex answer he speaks of could be pretty similar to what I'm thinking. But if you have a different opinion on this, please let me know in the comments. And I think it's about time to move on to FNAF 4, because, man. Now, in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, Golden Freddy kinda takes a weird turn, because this is when Fredbear was properly introduced in the FNAF. Now, Fredbear was originally mentioned in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and was implied to have been the Golden Freddy suit. But FNAF 4 decided to finally actually show us Fredbear, and he's not completely one-to-one with Golden Freddy. Yeah, there's definitely similarities, they're both yellow bears, but Fredbear's hat and bow tie are purple for some reason? This paired with the fact that Nightmare Fredbear is the only variant of Golden Freddy that doesn't really seem to have any connection to the original Golden Freddy. He's presented differently, he acts differently, and he's implied to be the embodiment of the crying child's fears of animatronics after the bite. And there's also the fact that he has a second form called Nightmare, which is pitch black and is translucent, and also appears to be some sort of representation for death itself for the crying child. Now obviously there is the lore about FNAF 4 that was revealed in the B72 book, that the FNAF 4 house is actually just a fake simulation house that was made by William Afton to test the fear of children, and the nightmare animatronics are the result of hallucinogenic gas putting on these dummies. I greatly apologize if this video is the way you found that out. So that kinda implies that, no matter what, Nightmare Fredbear probably isn't really connected to the original Golden Freddy, in the sense that the actual spirit of Golden Freddy is not responsible for Nightmare Fredbear, William Afton is. And it's pretty obvious that Nightmare Fredbear was an actual creation and not just a nightmare, because he shows up in Help Wanted and the logbook, which both imply that he had to have existed at some point for multiple people to know about him. So that's all fine and dandy. There's also the fact that he has the weird stomach mouth, which could imply that he's maybe connected to the circus baby, because the big mouth, the big claw coming out, I don't know. That's just a theory, but that's for a different video, I think. FNAF 4, or at least the minigames in FNAF 4, seem to take place before most of the murders had even happened, which would be before the Golden Freddy spirit was even roaming around, so I wouldn't really say it's relevant to this game. There were old theories that the Fredbear plush that the crying child has around with him was possessed by Golden Freddy, but that's kind of deconfirmed by Sister Location, which shows that it just had a walkie-talkie in it and it was probably just William inside of the plushie. And speaking of Sister Location, I got a bit more to say about that game. And you might be saying, wait, Golden Freddy wasn't in Sister Location, you rascal. Okay. But before we move on to Sister Location, I do want to mention how there is the thing where Nightmare Fredbear does turn into a head at several points in FNAF 4, which is definitely a reference to what he does in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but I kinda just think it's a reference, and because he's really, really massive, so it'd be very hard to fit him on the bed or in the closet. Something funny I want to point out is how, in the closet render, you can actually see his body clipping through the floor, which is really, really funny. There's so much clipping in Scott's old games, and it should be so easily avoided because it's pre-rendered, but it still happens, and it's just really funny to me. So, if you guys didn't know, Sister Location actually does have a Golden Freddy variant, but it's not as direct as you'd think it would be. It's not like a Golden Funtime Freddy, that does not exist. But there is this weirdo whose name is Yendo. And he's a bizarre character to say the least. There's not really much we know about him just as a whole. But mechanically, he is very, very similar to Golden Freddy and is very likely a nod to him. Obviously, for one, it is a Freddy variant that predominantly uses yellow and is even named after the color yellow, Yendo, Yellow Endo. His appearance in the main game comes from Funtime Auditorium, where there's a rare chance that he can show up in there instead of Funtime Foxy, before immediately vanishing. Now, showing up and immediately vanishing is very much Golden Freddy's thing in the first game. But an even more direct reference is in Sister Location's Custom Night mode, which includes Yendo as one of the selectable characters. And in this mode, his mechanic is literally identical to Golden Freddy's. He shows up in your office, and you need to pull up your camera monitor to make him go away. If you don't pull it up in time, he's gonna jump scare you. With, might I mention, a beautifully animated jump scare. I mean, this is clearly Scott Cawthon's best work here. I mean, he really outdid himself with this animation here. This looks really, really good. Yendo brings up a very interesting discussion, and that is, does Golden Freddy actually get repaired in FNAF 1, or does he just change forms because he's a ghost? And for those of you who don't know, this whole discussion is basically derived from the fact that FNAF 2 takes place before FNAF 1, and the withered animatronics are implied to have been retrofitted into the FNAF 1 animatronics, giving an explanation as to why all of them look different between the two games. But Golden Freddy, on the other hand, doesn't really make sense because why would they retrofit Golden Freddy? They never intended on using this suit, and it's just a random one that sits in the back room. Hey, I made this exact same point earlier. Did you guys realize? Were you paying attention? Good job, I'm proud of you. The reason why Yendo makes this question apparent is because Yendo acts exactly like Golden Freddy, despite clearly being a Funtime animatronic, which Golden Freddy is anything but. I see Yendo as a big supporting factor to this theory that Golden Freddy changes appearance depending on the Freddy of the respective location he's at. Obviously, Golden Freddy inhabiting the Sister Location facility would cause the spirit to take the form of a Funtime animatronic, much like the suit appears to retrofit itself to fit in with the other animatronics in FNAF 1. I am a firm believer that Yendo and Golden Freddy are the same character. I don't think Yendo has any other significance besides that. There's never really been any elaboration for him. I think he's just the Sister Location facility's version of the Golden Freddy apparition. And if the theory that Molten Freddy specifically contains the spirits of the original MCI kids is true, then this Yendo theory is supported even heavier because we know that Golden Freddy's spirit had to have been present in the Sister Location facility. Now, does this mean that Yendo's endoskeleton is real? No, that's just how the player sees it. And my evidence for this will be the Five Nights at Freddy's Monopoly board, because in this you can see these hallucination cards feature Golden Freddy proudly on the front, which means that I'm right. Okay, that's kind of a joke bit of proof, but I just really wanted to mention it. I don't think Golden Freddy is physically changing forms, I just think it's how he appears to other people. Hey guys, so I'm continuing work on this video like literally months later, and since I've recorded this, Help Wanted 2 came out, and Yendo's in it, and he's not, he's in the game, in the virtual like reality thing. I don't know what this implies, but I feel like it's important to mention, and it may or may not debunk what I just said, but I don't care. Golden Freddy has essentially no presence in Pizza Sim, and this is when the arc for this character gets especially confusing. Before now, it's been pretty straightforward. This game is when I don't even know what's going on. So for the entirety of the main FNAF 6 game, Golden Freddy's completely absent. Nothing ever comes of it. There's no Golden Freddy mention. Golden Freddy's not one of the animatronics that's burned and their souls are set free. He is completely unaccounted for. And this was probably deliberate because in the planned DLC turned full game Ultimate Custom Night, we see that basically the entire operation of that was hosted by Golden Freddy to make sure William Afton suffers. And this is where things get confusing, because this should be the simplest story ever, you know? William Afton dies, Golden Freddy's spirit latches on and makes him a personal hell where he has to face all of his own creations. Golden Freddy is convinced by Old Man Consequences to make peace, and then William Afton just ends up in hell. But of course, because it's a story written by Scott Cawthon, nothing is ever that simple. And the Fazbear Frights books seem to imply that this is actually taking place in a coma that William Afton is in after the FNAF 6 fire. Somehow he survived after all that, and he's basically just like paralyzed, laying down in a hospital bed. I don't know why they admitted him to a hospital looking like a burnt skeleton, but it's implied that William Afton is having extreme brutal nightmares during this, and that's very, very similar to what Ultimate Custom Night seems to be. And then after this, he goes to a warehouse, and then he becomes Glitch Trap. That would be simple enough. But no, because this is not Golden Freddy, it's a completely other, previously unmentioned spirit, which is a kid in an alligator mask named Andrew. You know from the Happiest Day minigame, you see all the kids in the mask? That one. So then that brings up the question, is this even Ultimate Custom Night? Because Golden Freddy sure as hell isn't Andrew. They have quite literally been in the same room together. But this spirit seems to have the exact same fiery vengeance in them for William, and the characters seem to be portrayed very, very similarly. But for literally who knows why, they're completely different characters. Who even is Andrew? Oh, I wish I could tell you. This random kid being introduced as a significant lore character is such a curveball, and it's not in a good way. Like, this is just convoluted for the sake of it. And also, if you'd like to make the argument that the Man Room 1280 isn't canon to the games, I'd like to direct you to one of the guidebooks. This isn't like a fan theory or anything. They just straight up told us this, that there's a picture in FNAF 6 the whole time of the same hospital that William went to. Meaning that Scott had this in the bag. He knew what he was doing. Which, you know, makes sense. UCN was planned during the development of FNAF 6, but it just... what? No matter how simple the plot point may seem in this franchise, it's always gonna devolve into something that is kind of insane, and it doesn't really, like... I don't know what Scott... Like, the Man in Ruin 280, I actually like the idea for that story. I like the idea that William survived. I'm in the minority on that, but I do like the idea. I think it works pretty well if it was actually Golden Freddy's spirit, because literally, who is Andrew? I don't know who this kid is. And I really don't want to hear the arguments where, like, oh, but the face that shows up in UCN is a boy. You can't tell who that is. Tell me you can identify this face. Tell me you can put a gender on this. You don't know. In the game, they say he's here and always watching, so you could assume that it's a boy. But then you remember, Golden Freddy's a boy, and the spirit doesn't necessarily have to correlate to the actual animatronic. Because he's here could very easily just be referring to, Golden Freddy, who we see at the end of the game, who's like the one puppeteering this. I'm not telling you guys how to interpret these things, but from my personal, take on this whole plot line, I think that the story is just better if we just, pretend Andrew doesn't exist and just say it's, Cassidy or blonde hair kid. Is blonde hair kid Andrew? Are you Andrew from FNaF movie? Are you Andrew? I don't know. I prefer to just remove the needless complications. I don't care about who Andrew is. And I don't think anybody should. This character was just kind of shoehorned in to be important, even though, who is this? Maybe it's not supposed to be the kid from the minigame. Maybe it's just a completely different kid wearing an alligator mask who's tied to the murders. Well, that's even more dumb! Also, in UCN, there's a cool Easter egg where if you use the death coin on Golden Freddy, he actually turns into Fredbear and jump scares you, so, first and last physical appearance of Fredbear in the entire franchise, so that's cool. Now, it is a little funny because a lot of drama did actually come up because of how the Fredbear design looked, because he's just kind of Golden Freddy but with a purple hat and bow tie. He does have some differences, like he has smaller cheeks and a bigger snout and smaller ears and thinner eyebrows, I don't know. Still a glorified recolor though. But if anything, this just kind of means that Fredbear was what looked very similar to the original Freddy and Golden Freddy animatronics, except he was slightly different. So, I guess we know that now. Number 6, help wanted Golden Freddy Easter egg found in the game. Somebody was playing FNaF Help Wanted, and they played the Curse of Dreadbear DLC. And they were wondering, Golden Freddy's not even in the game. Well, he is, because they open up the 3 clown posters, and then you throw the darts at clown posters, and it turns It's Me room, and it's like Golden Freddy, and he's in the game. So, Fighting to Freddy's Help Wanted is pretty devoid of Golden Freddy. He is completely absent from the FNaF 1 mode in the game. However, he does make a brief cameo in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC in the form of this It's Me Easter egg. Now, It's Me is obviously Golden Freddy's signature phrase. That's what's attached to his character. So, this obviously means that Golden Freddy's still around to some capacity. Why? I'm not necessarily sure. It could have been inferred that he passed on in UCN because of, the old man consequences thing, but maybe he came back when he saw Glitch Trap? I'm not really sure. But I'm gonna assume it has something to do with Glitch Trap because I can't imagine Golden Freddy's spirit is too happy about the killer being back. I'm not gonna get into the whole, is Glitch Trap the mimic or is it William Afton? I don't know. Cause I don't care at this point. I just don't. But either way, this Easter egg in Curse of Dreadbear is basically just there to tell us Golden Freddy's spirit is not 100% gone for some reason, and it will probably never be paid off as to why, but it's there. Now let's take a quick detour to everybody's favorite mobile spin-off game, Five Nights at Freddy's AR Special Delivery, and by everybody, I mean Funko. Now, I know what you're probably saying. FNaF AR? That game sucks! Well, actually, I think the Golden Freddy stuff included in this game is pretty cool. So yeah, of the few FNaF characters that were actually added to this damn game, Golden Freddy was one of them, and he was added for Christmas. They did this cool little community thing where you had to capture a certain amount of animatronics or something to fill this meter that would unlock Golden Freddy. I don't quite remember what the criteria was, but it was something like that. And I think animation and presentation-wise, Golden Freddy is one of the best characters in this whole game. The model leaves a bit to be desired. It's just kind of their Freddy model, but they retextured it, which, you'd expect it. But they didn't even hollow out his eyes or anything. It looks like the Funko action figure. But then his teeth are yellow for some reason. They also opted to make him literally gold rather than just, yellow. But, despite all that, I don't really mind it. I think this design is perfectly fine, and I think it's a unique take that I honestly don't think is bad. It's just a bit weird. And he's got these really cool animations. He's all twitchy and stuff, and he looks around, and he makes these weird, squishy noises, too, like he has flesh inside of him. His endoskeleton is, fun fact, actually red for some reason, which has always been very intriguing to me, and the red endoskeleton is definitely probably related to the fleshy noises. It sounds like there's a dead body actively inside of the costume, which is so cool. And FNAF AR did the same sound design for Springtrap as well. I don't know why this is the only time this kind of sound design has been used for animatronics like this in FNAF games, but it's really cool. And I think animation-wise, as a whole, this is just very, very good. This is how I would imagine Golden Freddy to walk, considering he doesn't really stand up ever. So I assume him trying to stand up and walk around, he'd look a little like this. He's all wobbly and uneven looking. I think it looks very, very good. He also has some really good ambience for when you actually fight him. Lore-wise, what are the implications of Golden Freddy being in this game? Probably, like, I don't know, did Phasma Entertainment just, like, know about Golden Freddy, like the haunted suit, and then make it into their Funtime service, or, like, did they make a Golden Freddy for the Funtime service completely unrelated, and then the real Golden Freddy possessed it? Like, I don't know what's going on here, but it's kinda cool. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is a game where Golden Freddy doesn't really appear at all, but he is hinted at quite a bit. And I don't just mean obvious things like the Golden Glamrock Freddy plush, because let's be honest, they probably just came up with that and then afterwards realized, oh, that's kind of like Golden Freddy. Well, that's neat. Anyway, I'm talking about something like the Princess Quest minigames, which feature a girl who is noticeably very glowy and golden, who meets with a very not subtle parallel to Old Man Consequences, and was originally called Cassidy in the files of the game. And obviously, if you're a longtime FNAF fan, Cassidy is the widely agreed spirit to be inside of Golden Freddy. Well, widely agreed is a strong word, but a lot of people think it's Cassidy. I'm not going to go out and say this is 100% confirmation that the Princess Quest girl is Golden Freddy, but I am going to say that it definitely was something that they thought about at one point in development. We know pretty damn well that Security Breach had a lot of story threads that Scott didn't really fully explain to Steel Wool, but they put in the game anyway because he obviously told them to, and they kind of have to listen to the creator of the series.
To tell Steel Wool to do specific things throughout the game. Put specific items in specific places, have specific characters do certain things, meanwhile not telling them what the story plot was. And so really what you ended up having were the same pieces, but telling completely different stories. Burn Trap. Originally, Burn Trap was never supposed to move. Well, obviously, that's not what we got in Security Breach. In Security Breach, we got a capsule opening and purple smoke flowing out and him climbing out and coming to get you. And so it's just not quite the same thing.
And I'd go as far to say that it's a stretch if you genuinely believe Scott didn't have any intention for Golden Freddy to be tied to Princess Quest, even if that was lost in translation. The spirit who previously wanted to torture Afton for all of eternity, yeah, I'm pretty sure they'd want to come back when an evil AI version of him is here. So I think the spirit of Golden Freddy coming back to help Vanessa be freed from Glitchtrap's control is a pretty cool idea, regardless of if it's still the case. Now, I'm not going to ignore the fact that the Princess Quest girl is also very obviously supposed to resemble Vanessa, but the glowing gold color in the name in the files definitely leads you to believe that there's something to do with Golden Freddy here. And obviously, the red old man who's supposed to be Old Man Consequences. I mean, I'm not even going to say that's like a theory, because, I mean, come on. A big connection to UCN and Security Breach as well is the abundance of Nightmare Beyond plushies and imagery in both Security Breach and Help Wanted 2. And since Nightmare Beyond was not canon in FNAF 4, but was canon in UCN, paired with the fact that Nightmare Beyond is on the icon for UCN, It's pretty easy to use all this Nightmare imagery as a way to tie this back to Ultimate Custom Night. There's an undeniable looming presence over the last few FNaF entries, and it's kind of hard to ignore. I've already made an abundance of videos about it, and I might make more, to be honest, because I kinda have more to say about it. But this Golden Freddy, Nightmare UCN security reach connection is probably one of my favorite things in the modern FNaF lore that has gone unexplained. And I'd really love to actually see it get paid off eventually. Golden Freddy appears in Help Wanted 2 as one of the spirit plushies, so I'm glad to see him being directly acknowledged again, since in the Steel Wool games, he hasn't really been acknowledged directly at all until this point. There was also some subtle imagery in Ruin of a Golden Freddy statue drowning in a lake, which could definitely be related to Ultimate Custom Night. Not to mention the fact that in this exact room where you find this, you can also find the Golden Freddy plush. Definitely not looking too good. So do I think we've seen the last of Golden Freddy? Absolutely not. Do I think this will all get paid off in a satisfying way? Only time will tell. But I think of all the spirits from the classic FNaF games, this one is here to stay. At least for a little while longer. So leaving this video pretty open-ended, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye! That was my impression of Markiplier.